Welcome to the Cattle Talk Podcast, your weekly breakdown of cattle market fundamentals, key news, and the insights shaping the industry. Trading commodity futures and options involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors.
All right, today is May 15th. I've got Jeff here with us today. We're going to talk about the cattle market. How's it going?
May 15th already. That's wild.
Stuff should be doing stuff by now. The grain markets, they're doing stuff.
They're definitely doing stuff. Not always the right stuff.
Not always the right stuff. It depends on what side you are this week. For a lot of the cattle guys in the room, honestly, this was probably a nice little relief here recently, wasn't it?
Yeah, the grain markets have kind of been a little bit concerning as it's been, we do this every year, right, Mike? We rally pretty good in May and into June on grains, and we keep asking ourselves, well, is this the real thing or is it just seasonal, right? Mm-hmm. That's what keeps going through the end user's mind. And this week was one of those weeks. It kept going up. Weren't really sure why. Kind of thought we were building a bunch of premium in before those Chinese meetings. Turns out that's exactly what we were doing. So yes, that's a bit of a relief from this side.
It's funny because each year it seems like something a little different. Like most years, the commonality is you trade weather, whatever. Yep. But if you just close your eyes and say like, yeah, we rallied this much into May, middle of May, we kind of sold off. It's like, yep, that looks.
That's what we've done.
It started
so far.
raining, crop went in fine. But we've been having some pretty expensive feeders get placed, right? That I mean, these guys probably above $5. Corn starts to matter below $5. Then it's kind of an afterthought, isn't it?
I think so. I don't think, everybody adjusts their cost of gain a little bit. But yeah, it's if it's in the fours and with some pretty wide basis that we've seen so far, I think that might be changing as you get into new crop and certainly into a year from now type of thing. But, basis has been cooperative. So yeah, your cost of gain stays pretty low.
Now let's talk about cattle futures specifically for a hot minute before we get to this week's breakdown of kind of what we saw happen. Talk to me about the activity we've seen this week so far, because it's been huge moves. It's been super choppy. Yep. What do you take from like Kate, if you pull up like the August live cattle chart? What do you think you see when you view this chart?
It looks to me, and you disagree if you would like, but I think we have most of the trends and moving averages and everything pretty well intact as we leave the week on a Friday here. The line's not on the chart, but you can throw a trend line in, across some of those lows on this August chart, and that held pretty well to this week on most months. Today specifically, he's got the 20-day moving average, and we bounced off that pretty hard. 50 days have been holding quite well. We've never even gotten close to the 100 days, of course. So in general, I would say, Mike, the trend is intact. We haven't broken anything down through anything too significant to the downside.
Now, one thing I've noticed here over the last few trading sessions is, so that's the fat cattle side. And I think that chart looks awesome. I think it looks like just like the last few times we've seen a little bit of a correction, and then you open up a couple days above those lines, then you pop up. So like that chart looks awesome. Now you're at the top end of the range almost again already. Now look at feeder cattle, Kate. If you pulled up like August feeder cattle, it's a little bit different. It seems like we're 2 days behind almost, doesn't it? Like we're at the bottom end of that trading range on that guy.
They really are, and they had a disappointing week compared to what the live cattle have done. And I don't know exactly why that is, Mike. I know some of it was the corn rally in the beginning of the week, right? That kind of made some sense. But now we've taken that corn's about as cheap as it's been in all month, right? So I'm not sure why they've got some energy to them today. So maybe, like you say, it'll just kind of even itself out in the coming days here into next week. But, the old fogies on the block used to say that feeders were the leaders, right? So, and I still kind of believe that comment is true. So that part's a little maybe discouraging or frustrating, one or the other here as we analyze the two different markets.
This probably makes too much sense for it to be completely right. Jeff, but is the part of the rally that we've seen this week when we did find strength, like today, for example, cash has been really strong for the fat cattle market. So, like, is that part of the reason of the discrepancy you think between the two? If we've got nearby super strong cash fundamentals, is that why maybe fat cattle are holding at a little bit better value than feeders?
100%. You're hitting the nail on the head there. So the fat cattle was all the news this week.
Yep.
And record high cash, although we say that every week.
Yeah. But I mean, it's $6
by a
higher.
ways.
It wasn't like a 50-cent higher record.
100%. Yeah. So that's all the news, right? Cash is big time. All of the futures are having a hard time totally buying into it, right? You've got the June. Where's June going to be at?
Yeah, even the back months. Yeah, they don't
want to come along very bad at all.
No.
So, June wants to stay $10 to $12 under cash this week at least. And so maybe that's all the same type of sediment, right? But that's the concerning piece about the feeder cattle. If they're truly trading more market tone or market undertones, if you will, and they're at the bottom of the range as fat cattle put in some of the highest cash by quite some margin. That's kind of the back and forth that we're observing this week, right? Like the futures don't really want to come along. Fundamentals are kind of forcing them into it, type of a thing.
Your fundamentals, I'd argue, are still very tight supply. Supply has a tightest correlation with what price does, right, in the cattle market.
Extremely tight market-ready supply. Absolutely.
Exactly. And then, honestly, demand is still okay. Like equities, we hit 7,500 yesterday on the S&P 500 record. I know we're off today, but consumers, just from even my own experiences this week, like there's still plenty of people spending money out and about on things we probably shouldn't be.
Yes.
So if we are tight on stuff, we aren't showing it at any level quite yet. Maybe gas prices haven't hit everybody's, credit card statement yet with that hike.
The only thing that we're getting a little bit concerned about is the choice beef market. And I know we talk about that a lot, so we won't spend a lot of time on it. But another week does go by, Mike, where seasonally you'd like to see that thing rallying.
Pork too.
And it's not.
Yep.
And so, we'll keep watching it. We're not completely alarmed yet at this point because it's very high prices. But we're not seeing that May rally like we have in the past.
Historically, you get to the end of the month, the futures start to get disappointed that you're not seeing that pop, right? But
that would be my suspicion. They'll give it a little bit more time here.
Yep.
But that will become the story at some point here as we get to the first part of June.
Very much so. Can you talk me a little bit through the timeline of we talked through the fundamental things that maybe happened this week, mainly on the fat cattle side. Talk to me about some of the other headlines that were massive implications on these futures markets this week.
Interesting week as far as headlines go and trying to decipher, okay, what really matters here and what's actually going to come to fruition, of course, have been hard to put your thumb on. So, starting at the beginning of the week, Trump is, he was rumored to have some folks from Brazil and from JBS and such, at the White House. Was that last Thursday or Friday, whatever day the market was down pretty hard. Turns out that was probably all true. So starting the week out, he's talking about, eliminating any tariffs above the quotas. This is imported beef coming into the U.S. I want to be kind of specific on that because there's some stuff going back and forth this week on that as well. But imported beef coming into the U.S. first was, okay, we're going to get rid of any of the tariffs above the people's quotas. That kind of changed later, Tuesday, I think it was already to, we're not going to do that immediately. And then we're going to reduce the tariffs above the quota. So I think that's where we're sitting today. I don't believe we have any specifics on it yet, and as far as when it's going to take place and what that reduction is going to look like.
And that aligns really well with Trump's overall goal that he wants to make beef prices cheap.
Yep. And the only country that it really impacts into a great deal right at the moment is Brazil.
Which is who we had at the White House.
Yep. And, a lot of other countries might run in above their quota later in the year. Brazil front loads that thing really heavy Usually
Feb almost.
hits their quota by beginning of February this year, mid-February in the past couple of years. So it matters to them. They've been a big importer in the past couple of years. It's kind of a new thing since 2021. And our prices started going up, and they've found our marketplace to be pretty attractive, and it's still attractive to them today. So it's not like they hit their quota and they immediately stopped shipping us meat. That's not the case. They actually haven't slowed down that much this year. So economically, it still makes sense. It's just they're getting hit with a 20-some% tariff on that meat. So if you take that tariff away or take it in half or whatever, certainly the motivation will be stronger to bring some more meat in. Today, Brazil is responsible for about 20% of our imports this year. So it's a little hard for us to completely understand, okay, well, how much more meat can they throw our direction? And I think time will only tell as we've tried to sort through that data. But they certainly have some beef. They got the channels open to bring it up here. I think it would be somewhat impactful.
So let's throw in the third country in our little love triangle here, which would be very relevant, which is China, because obviously Brazil does a lot of business with China as well. This week we had news, obviously we had China negotiations going on between President Xi and Trump, with him being there. Now after the meetings, it does look like President Xi is going to visit the U.S. in autumn coming up as well. What can you tell me about what we learned for beef specifically in the talks this week?
Well, basically, China has shut down the trade between U.S. beef going to China when the whole tariff situation happened here a year ago. Before that, we were starting to gain some pretty nice traction of shipping some meat over there. Not that it was huge volume, but it was, the trend was there. So that's what's changed this week. China's saying we're back open for business. So the U.S. packers, processors will be eyeing that marketplace as far as an export situation goes. Now, let's come back and think about our supply situation. When we talk about this, we're about as short as we've ever been on supply. In my opinion, we're as short as we will be in the coming months and coming years. That's certainly debatable. So I don't know how much meat we'll really want to flow that direction, but let's, the beef trade has been different than, say, like the pork trade going over there. Pork, that's been the lower end cut. That's been a really nice value add to some of the variety meats even, Mike. Beef has been a different trend. It's been the higher end corn-fed type of choice beef that marketplace has been demanding. So it'll be interesting to see. It might, as crazy as this is going to sound, they might buy some U.S. beef, and we might export a little bit more beef to China. And it'll be the higher end stuff if we do.
Well, the rumor was that China wanted beef from the U.S., but that rumor also included, well, Trump wants cheap beef and he's not going to give it to him.
Right.
So, and now they're fine. I'm selfish with my steaks. You can keep all of them here in the U.S. We'll try to push this price down a little bit. We'll give them the tongues and the heads.
You might have to eat one less because a couple Chinese folks will get it instead, Mike.
Very much so. So we'll see. We'll give them the tongues and the heads and stuff. I'll take the steaks all day long. But I'm with you there. So we'll see. This was going to happen in China. They delayed it, or what's the updated situation on this part of the discussion between the U.S. and China?
That part I think is happening. We're just not exactly sure on timing.
Makes sense. That seems like a very generic theme here as of lately with this. So, okay. Other final thoughts? Any takeaways from the major headlines that we had this week?
I think that wraps it up on the cattle stuff for today, Mike.
All right. Well, please click the link in the description below to get our DMC, our daily market commentary, along with other marketing info as well that you'll find marketing relevant. And please visit our website at professionaleggmarketing.com. Thanks.